Hello everyone, welcome to the Python conference. The topic of this session is Internet of a lot of things. Can I be with you now? I would like to introduce you to our speaker, Mazda Imani. Mazda is a mechatronics engineer. Hello Mazda.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Are you ready for the presentation?
Yeah, I can get started.
Yeah, great.
So, hi everybody. Thank you for listening in. In this presentation, I will give you my story on how I encountered a problem, how I had a vision and tried solving it using Python and a lot of online frameworks and services. In this talk, I won't focus so much on the technical aspects, but instead, I want to inspire you on one way to go from a vision to a proof of concept. So first, a bit of info before we get started. My name is, as mentioned, Mazda, and I am a software developer that lives in Stockholm. During my normal time, I work with product development and especially firmware development for these products. And I love working with consumer products because it forces you to think about the end user and how he or she will interact with it in the end. So usually my home world is the embedded world, and it's mostly in C. And I usually describe myself as a programmer with an oscilloscope. However, I'm also a big fan of the ease of use that Python has with all its libraries and all its example code. So when I want to do a prototype myself, I usually end up using Python. And when I don't sit in front of a computer, I try to get out in nature. And what do you do when you're in nature? You do a fire, of course, or make a fire. So summers in Sweden are usually very varying. Sometimes it's raining for a very long time, and there's no problem making a fire. But sometimes we get these warm weather and sunshine, and then these dry periods increase the risk of forest fires. And it's not uncommon for the counties to declare fire bans on and off multiple times during a typical summer. And yeah, here are some news headlines. And it's very common for the local newspapers to also pick up these stories whenever a ban is issued. But here I see, as a programmer, an interesting problem coming. Usually, people in the society are pretty good or well informed of whenever a fire ban is put in place. And this is because it's common for the newspaper to report when the fire ban starts. But it's actually not as common for the newspapers to report when the fire ban is lifted. So I guess you see where the problem comes. Let's, for example, say that there is a fire ban put in place on June 1st. Okay, but it's the next day, the Tuesday after. Is it still okay to make a fire or not? I think most people would say no, there is a fire ban. Okay, so what about on the weekend, on the Friday? I would say it's probably still a fire ban. And yeah, you see where I'm going with this. If you go to the next week and the weekend after that, and the problem is that if you only report the start of something, but never the end, you don't really know for any given time if this still applies or not. And yeah, I mean, this is all very theoretical, but let's go look at the public fireplace. And let's see what the municipality does. So in this picture, this is a public fire hut for firewood. So it's really handy. The municipality, they chop up wood and they put it there for you to use. And it's nicer for the back, so you don't always need to bring it. So let's look closer at the information sign they have. It's in Swedish, of course, but it more or less says, yeah, some info on where you should do your fire, that you need to be careful, etc., etc. And if you want to know about the fire risk level, you need to call a number. That's strange. And it must surely be an old sign. So let's look at the county's fire department webpage instead. Okay, here we are again. Always bring tools to put out the fire when you do one. If you want to know about the fire risk level, you can call a number. And it's the same number. I think this is odd. So let's call this number. And what happens if you call the number? Well, you reach an answering machine. And yeah, this is a transcription of the message. It's in Swedish. And I would say that the only interesting part is the highlighted part. Inte eldningsförbud, which means no fire ban. So the year is 2020. And you still need to call a phone number to get information that could very easily be answered and presented in a binary yes or no kind of way. And it also makes you think on how people with hearing disabilities or people who simply struggle with spoken Swedish would solve this problem and use this information. And it was right about here I had a vision. I want to have a web page that could easily answer this question in a much quicker and more accessible way than this answering machine ever can. Yeah, let's circle them. I don't know what the name of this phenomenon is called. I like to call them single question pages. And it's these ridiculously small and lightweight web pages that only serve the purpose of answering one question. Is it Friday yet? What week is it? Is it Christmas? No. And yeah, can I grill now? So this is my vision. I want a web page that with a yes or no question gives you the answer if you can grill now. So now we have some requirements. So we want to have a web page with a memorable domain name. In this case, kanjaggrilla.nu. We want it to display a very clear yes or no answer. It should always be up to date. It shouldn't require any manual input from me. And I don't want a web page where you need to do any registrations. There are no newsletters, no cookies, no service, nothing. It should just show the answer. And of course, it should be automatic, so the information is always up to date. And for now, I limit myself to Stockholm. So let's start splitting the problem. Okay, we have the first part of the problem. I want to display a yes or no as a decision on the web page. But how do I get this text? I picked my data source to be the answering machine from the Stockholm Fire Department. Because this is, of course, the only true source for now. But how do I get the voice call into a format that we can work with? I think we first need an audio recording of this. And there's, of course, a tool for that. I actually found that one of the sponsors of PyCon, 46 Elks, have an extensive phone API. And I can, with a very simple script, do a simple HTTP request to make a phone call to this answering machine. And then I use a web link to download the recording after the call finishes. And luckily, the answering machine hangs up on you at the end of the phone call. So I don't even need to keep an eye on that. And with this, we have the raw data to go forward with. OK, so we have the recording. But in able to feed it into any form of classification algorithm, I think it needs to be in text format. And so this was the next challenge. And after testing a bunch of audio to text transcribing programs, I wasn't happy with the results of any of them. The biggest problem is that the language is in Swedish, and I noticed that this really reduces the number of available models. I also have a theory that the compression artifacts of a recorded phone call don't work well with most transcribing software. I would suspect that their models are trained on clear voice recordings, which I don't have. So here I was stuck, but then it hit me. Which company is really good at listening for voices and converting it to text, even in very noisy environments? Well, OK Google, of course. And yeah, I had a look at Google's natural language processing API and gave it a try, and it was very successful. And again, as an added bonus, Google has a Google Cloud client library for Python, and that also makes it very easy to use. OK, let's look at the classification algorithm then. And to do that, let's look at the transcript from the phone call. If you're a data scientist, you might want to look away for a moment now. So what is the most explicit feature that we can define in this text? If you have no time and budget and want to test quick, you need to keep it simple. And you can, for example, do a simple pattern matching in this case. And I think in this case, the words inte eldningsförbud, no fire ban, is what defines is as, yes, there's a fire ban and we cannot do, inte eldningsförbud means that there's no fire ban and we can, of course, we can make a fire. And if we don't find the string, well, then there is a fire ban. So in the end, this is how my quote-unquote classification algorithm looks like. And yes, I still have no idea how to do special characters like O and I will keep that for the next iteration. So we now have a method to make a decision based on the text file. And now I just need to store it in some accessible database. This is a world that I'm very unfamiliar with, so I'll just mention it briefly here. I ended up using Firebase. This is a web tool that seems to be mostly used to help develop web apps that need on the backend. And it's also hosted by Google. And I found that the free tier is very generous. I don't make use of the whole Firebase framework. For now, I only use Firestore as my database, which has an API to load and get values from if you have the credentials. And now we have our pipeline to, within a minute or so, make a decision if it's a fire ban or not. And until here, everything has been written in Python. And it's all in the same file. And to limit the amount of phone calls that we make to this poor fire department, I think a daily update of the fire ban status is more than enough. And since I don't want to run it manually every morning, I set it up to run automatically on a virtual Google Cloud machine. And then finally, what about the web page? For the last bit, I found that it's actually easier to use a proper front-end language. So I stepped away from Python and I found some JavaScript snippets to help me pull my entries from a database, and so they can be displayed on the web page. And this page is nothing fancy. It's a simple static HTML page that has this JavaScript code. And everything is hosted on GitHub pages with my own domain connected to it. And I actually found that GitHub is a great place to get started with if you want to play around with creating your own website and you're used to using Git and you want to do it the hard way, just editing HTML files. And I will link my GitHub repository at the end of this presentation if you want to have a look at it. So what's our takeaway with this? I mean, this whole project is, of course, a pretty silly solution to the problem of knowing if there is a fire ban or not. And maybe you're also realizing that this is not the most stable solution. There are many places where something can go wrong or break. However, I would say that I still managed to get my idea working, and I have a working prototype now. And I believe that this pipeline can be used to solve problems in the future that are similar to this. And most importantly, I now have a way to shame my county for in 2020 still thinking that people will call a phone number. I think most people won't. What I would like you to take away from this presentation is that when you're looking into starting your own projects, especially if you're doing them as a hobbyist, is to think hard about what you want. What is your vision? If you have a clear vision, it's much easier to follow through. Also, don't try to get obsessed with one solution. Instead, try to think about the problem that you're trying to solve. And again, this vision. Then try to break down a solution that you can work with. And once this is broken down, look at the pieces. Is there anything that has already been done that we can use? You don't always need to reinvent the wheel, that is, unless this is what you want to do. And finally, I know it's hard, but sometimes it's better to skip the details. If it works, maybe you can leave the improvements for the next iteration. And this is my presentation about how I went from my vision into a proof of concept. And I just want to thank you very much for listening to my story. And I hope I at least earned a click or a visit on my webpage to see what the current state is. Oh, I don't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you, Mazda. It was really interesting.
Thank you.
Then we are finished, and you can connect to the next presentation. And if you have any questions, you can ask Imani on the chat on Slack. So then, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And goodbye. Yes.
Yeah. Bye.